Hello everyone, and welcome to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. It's always a pleasure to have you here. If you love real celebrity stories and the kinds of emotions that stay with you long after the video ends, make sure to subscribe and tap like before we begin. Now, take a breath with me, because what shook the entertainment world this week felt like a small earthquake. The headline came quietly at first, then exploded everywhere. Navruz was going to be a father. For some, it sounded like happy news wrapped in celebration, almost cinematic. But there was one person for whom those words carried a soft, devastating echo. A woman who had once shared not only a romance with him, but a rhythm, a dream, an everyday language built from glances and laughter and long days on set that became long nights in real life. That woman was Alina. Alina had chosen silence for a long while. She had learned to be deliberate with her energy, to be gentle with herself. She curated a life that felt quiet and balanced. Work, close friends, fresh air, evenings at home, the calm that comes after a storm. She believed she was in a different chapter now and that the pages would turn on their own. But then the morning arrived when someone sent her a link without a caption, and the moment her eyes met the headline, the world shifted. Her coffee went still and untouched. Her phone slid down from her hand to the sofa cushion. The room around her felt louder in its silence than it ever had before. She didn't sob. She didn't call anyone. She stood there and let the air settle while the past came back in pieces that did not ask permission. The jokes that only they understood. The way his voice sounded when the camera stopped. Small rituals built across months that made them feel invincible, the kind of invincibility only love can invent. She had truly believed she was ready to move forward, that time had taught her how to fold old feelings into a drawer and lock it. But this wasn't jealousy. This was a tender wound, never quite healed, quietly opening again at the softest touch. The media could not stop. Talk shows speculated about Alp's private life and the future he was about to step into, framing every possibility in bright, breathless colors. Commentators compared timelines, old interviews, subtle gestures. And amid all of that noise, Alina's name returned like a melody everyone remembered. Fans recalled the electricity between them, on screen, yes, but even more so in the moments no script could predict. The kind of chemistry that made strangers feel they had front-row seats to something true. Alina remained silent. Not out of strategy, but out of care. Those who were close to her saw what the cameras couldn't. Her laugh had a softer curve. She took longer to answer messages at night. She lingered in doorways as if listening for a sound no one else could hear. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was nostalgia, gentle and unassuming, a quiet recognition that sometimes a piece of your heart keeps an address in the past, even when the rest of you has moved. A week later, she stepped into a public event and every eye found her. She looked luminous, but different, as if the light had changed behind her eyes. There was a tenderness to her poise that the red carpet couldn't polish away. During a brief interview on the sidelines, she finally let words slip through that carefully guarded doorway. She didn't say Alp's name. She didn't need to. Her voice was low, her answers simple. She spoke about being grateful for what used to be, about what love teaches you when it's present and what it teaches you again when it's gone. She spoke about letting go without breaking anything on the way out. It was not a confession designed for headlines, it was a message almost whispered to whoever needed it. On the other side of the city, Alp was navigating the swell of news that followed him like a shadow. Friends said he was happy, truly. They said he was excited, nervous in the best way, focused on what comes next. But they also noticed the way his smile would fade when he thought no one was looking, the way he took a breath before answering questions about the future. When he watched Alina's short interview, the quiet of it reached him. No anger. No judgment. Just warmth. Just understanding. He remembered long drives with the windows down and their laughter stretched thin across the night sky. He remembered the kind of calm you don't find twice. The public split itself into two choruses. One cheered for Alp and the new life growing just off stage, a fresh beginning, the promise of a family, the poetry of next chapters. The other mourned what they imagined Alina and Alp once held in their palms, as if they themselves had dropped it. But what almost no one realized was that some bonds don't leave, they just learn to be quiet. In interviews, whenever one of them came up in conversation, there was a softness in tone, a reverent pause after the name. When they would cross paths in crowded places and smile like people who know too much to pretend they don't, something unspoken hovered in the air and didn't fade. Weeks passed, and one evening Alina posted a photograph that was almost nothing, a wide band of sky melting into the sea, the sun slipping down with that familiar gold her fans associate with her favorite hours of the day. No filters. No glitter. Just a line written in her own handwriting over the light, some goodbyes never end, they simply learn to be silent. It was a single sentence that captured everything she had not been saying. It wasn't a complaint. It wasn't regret. It was a gentle salute to what exists even when it is no longer visible. Time, as always, took the headlines by the hand and led them elsewhere. New stories appeared. Fresh scandals, new premieres, the industry doing what it always does, moving. Alp settled into his responsibilities and the swirl of anticipation, meetings and plans and a calendar suddenly full of future. Alina returned to work with an intensity that looked like peace from the outside, scripts spread open, rehearsals stretching into late afternoons, long walks after set to clear her mind. But those who had followed them from the beginning knew this wasn't just another celebrity tale. There was marrow to it, something old and real. Their connection had never felt like a publicity stunt, not once. It was a collision between two souls who met at precisely the right minute and nevertheless were asked by life to depart too soon. People who were around Alina the night she read the news say she didn't cry for what left her. She cried for the part of it that stayed, the piece that made a quiet home inside her and refused to relocate. That's the thing about the truest loves, they don't sleep, they hum, gently, even beneath the loudest days. And perhaps that is why, when fate decided to add one more line to this chapter, it chose unannounced symmetry. Days later, invitations went out for a charity gala in Istanbul, the kind of event where cameras flash like lightning and applause feels like falling rain. Both of them were invited, and neither knew the other would be there. The city itself seemed to hold its breath. The venue gleamed, crystal, velvet, the elegance of a night designed to soften the heart. Alina arrived with that particular grace she wears like something borrowed from the wind. Alp stepped in with the simple elegance he never tries to force. And then, without orchestration or warning, they were standing a few paces apart. It wasn't dramatic. The room didn't hush. There was no collision of words, no statement ready for the microphones. It was quieter than that, more honest. Two people who had once known each other more deeply than the public ever could, standing in the middle of a constellation of cameras and strangers, catching one another's eyes and remembering, in an instant, the dictionary only they had written. A smile formed, small, real. A nod like a promise not to break the moment. If you were close enough to hear it, you might have caught a breath neither of them realized they were holding. They didn't touch. They didn't perform. They obeyed the room and the night and the charity they were there to support. But they paused long enough for the world to understand that some stories can be both ended and ongoing. Later, people would argue about the meaning of that glance. Some said it was closure. Others said it was hope. Maybe it was both. Maybe it was simply two people telling each other, without words, I see you. I'm grateful. We survived. After the gala, social media flooded with stills of the moment. Fans drew hearts around the distance between them as if the space were its own character. Others wrote long threads about timing and fate, about how love does not always look the way we want it to look, about how kindness is its truest expression. Through all of it, neither Alina nor Alp offered commentary. They let the night speak. In the weeks that followed, life resumed its uneven melody. Alp kept showing up, planning, learning, preparing for a role that has no script. He was seen leaving meetings with that mix of nerves and quiet pride, offering shy smiles to people who called his name from across the street. Alina kept working, disappearing into characters the way she always does, methodically, honestly, letting the craft hold her when reality gets loud. Friends say she's okay, and more than okay. They say she sits on her balcony at dusk and watches the city turn the same gold as that photo she posted. That her phone lights up with messages she doesn't always answer right away. That her laughter has returned, not brighter but deeper, as if it remembers its own echo. So what is left to say? Perhaps only this: what connected Alina and Alp was never a marketing plan or a storyline designed for ratings. It was a sincere link between two humans who recognized each other across the noise. They were lucky and unlucky at the same time, blessed to collide, doomed to part. Yet the thread remains. Maybe it always will. Not as a chain, not as a promise broken or a promise kept, but as a simple truth you carry with you when the lights go down and the guests depart. The heart remembers what was kind to it. And if you were to ask the city what it witnessed at that gala, it might say that time paused long enough for two people to acknowledge what they built. No one can take that away, not headlines, not gossip, not even the futures pulling them in opposite directions. The night moved on. The applause softened. The cameras were packed into cases. But somewhere between the door and the car, between the stage and the dark, something familiar kept breathing. For more updates and more stories told from the heart, make sure you're subscribed to Turkish Spotlight Secrets and hit like before you go. Thank you for being here. Until next time.